If you compare beer with bratwurst,
and cheese with wine,
or even whiskey
with donuts,
then we think you can pair all of these delicious drinks with
murder,
conspiracies,
missing persons,
and more.
Drink with us as you feed your craving for true crime and creepy stories.
What's up? What's up? Thank you for tuning in. If you accidentally tuned in, we'll let you know that this is a podcast called Perfectly Paired With, and it's a fun one, and you should keep listening. My wife, Catherine, over here, also known as Katie.
Only known as Katie.
She is only known outside of our domain here. I call her Catherine all the time.
No, he doesn't. That's
I
a
love
lie.
No, I do. You just don't notice. Anyway.
It's not.
I do too.
You're just lying to start the podcast. You never call me Catherine.
I call you Catherine all the time.
Okay, Jasonathan.
I will walk into the bathroom while you're showering and be like, Catherine. All right, just want to see that.
Okay, that's not this kind of podcast. So what kind of podcast is that?
We are, I guess we're a true crime podcast. We cover, even the CIA stuff.
We're fluidly true crime.
Yes. Yeah, we cover conspiracies sometimes, and a lot of that includes the CIA, some theories on some serial killers that go outside the domain of what they're known for. Check out Charles Manson, CIA episodes. But yeah, we mainly cover true crime, and it's all research done by my wife, and she tells me these stories because that's what we'd be doing anyway.
And while I told you those stories, what would you be doing?
I would be drinking, just like listening, and oh, that's cool. That's cool. Wow, interesting. No, I am fascinated by your ability to recall, even without taking the notes and everything. And with you taking the notes and writing it up, it is fascinating. So I am so happy we decided to do it in this platform where we both drink and we pair a drink with your story. That's probably the longest intro we've done, so I hope you're still listening. Anyway, yeah. Katie, do you have kind of a brief?
I do. It's a little bit longer.
Okay. Give us a briefing.
So it was close to midnight on August 6th, 1988, when 22-year-old Jane Borowski was making her way home after spending the evening at the Cheshire County Fair. As she drove home along Route 10 west of Swansea, New Hampshire, a craving hit, as cravings tend to do when you're pregnant. You see, Jane herself was 7 months along with a little girl. Now, the convenience store, Gamarlo's Market, that Jane had pulled into turned out to be closed. So she settled for purchasing a soda out of an exterior vending machine. Jane sat for a moment in her car, sipping her soda, when another vehicle pulled into the lot and parked next to the passenger side of Jane's vehicle. Not yet alarmed, Jane prepared to pull out of the parking lot when the driver of the other vehicle exited his car and walked around to her driver's side door. When the man first spoke, he asked Jane if the payphone in the front of the convenience store was working. Jane, now feeling probably small prickles of fear, replied that she didn't know about the phone. But just as the words escaped Jane's lips, the man opened the driver's side door and tried to pull Jane from the front seat. Jane screamed so loudly that she later would describe that she actually burst blood vessels in her eyes. And then, in an effort to fight off the attacker, Jane managed to swing her feet out of the vehicle and up in order to kick the man who was trying to grab her. Without meaning to, Jane actually kicked out her windshield. Then, realizing that Jane was ready to fight for her life, this man pulled out a knife and calmly asked Jane, "Is this enough to get you out of your car?" Fearing not only for her life, but the life of her unborn child, Jane stepped from the vehicle, all the while asking, Why are you doing this? And the man had an answer. He told Jane that she had actually been the one to hurt his girlfriend really badly. Then, thinking that this man was just confused, Jane tried to explain that she had never hurt anyone In the hopes to prove this story, Jane pointed out that her car was from New Hampshire and that his appeared to be registered in Massachusetts, so she couldn't be the one to have harmed his girlfriend. To this explanation, the man walked behind Jane's car, almost as if to verify her story with a license plate. As the space between Jane and the man grew, any alarm Jane was feeling subsided. But it was quickly replaced by anger because she had smashed her window, and she actually wanted his help. So, Jane, out of the confidence that this entire situation was a mistake, she yells, "Hey, asshole, what about my windshield?" Now, Jane had no way of knowing who this terrifying man actually was. But had she known, she probably would have chosen her words more wisely. Actually, had she known that this man would one day be referred to as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, she probably would have gotten back into her vehicle and driven away as quickly as she could. So it was close to midnight on August 6th, 1988, when 22-year-old Jane Borowski was making her way home after spending the evening at the Cheshire County Fair. As she drove home along Route 10 west of Swansea, New Hampshire, a craving hit, as cravings tend to do when you're pregnant. You see, Jane herself was 7 months along with a baby girl. The convenience store, Gomarlo's Market, that Jane had pulled into turned out to be closed, so she settled for purchasing a soda out of an exterior vending machine. Jane sat for a moment in her car sipping her soda when another vehicle pulled into the lot and parked next to the passenger side of her vehicle. Not yet alarmed, Jane simply prepared to pull out of the parking lot when the driver of the other vehicle exited his car and walked around to her driver's side door. When the man first spoke, he asked Jane if the payphone in front of the convenience store was working. Jane, I'm assuming now feeling small prickles of fear, replied that she didn't know about the phone. But just as the words left her lips, the man opened the driver's side door and tried to pull Jane from the front seat. Jane screamed so loudly that she would later describe that she had actually burst blood vessels in her eyes. And then, in an effort to fight off her attacker, Jane managed to swing her feet out and up in order to kick towards the man now grabbing at her. Without meaning to, Jane actually kicked out her windshield. Then, realizing that Jane was ready to fight, this man simply pulled a knife and calmly asked Jane, "Is this enough to get you out of your car?" Fearing not just for her life, but also the life of her unborn child, Jane stepped from the vehicle, all the while asking, "Why? Why is this happening?" And this man had an answer. He told Jane that she was the one who had hurt his girlfriend really badly. Then, thinking that this man was just confused, Jane tried to explain that she had never hurt anyone in her entire life. And in the hopes of proving this point, Jane said, "Look, my car is registered in New Hampshire, and it looks like yours is from Massachusetts, so I can't be the person you're looking for." To this explanation, the man simply walked behind Jane's car, almost as if he wanted to verify her story via her license plate. Now, as the space between Jane and the man grew, any alarm Jane was feeling slowly subsided, but it was replaced by anger about how she had been attacked and how her window was now destroyed. So, confident that this whole situation was a simple mistake, Jane yelled, "Hey, asshole, what about my windshield?" Now Jane had no way of knowing who this terrifying man was. But had she known, she probably would have chosen her words more wisely. Actually, had she have known that this man would one day be referred to as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, she probably would have gotten back into her vehicle and driven away as quickly as she could.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like your intro felt like you were just telling me the story of what happened.
Yeah, so this is going to be
But it feels like
a different
no. I like it
feel.
because it feels like you gave us it's like one of those movies where they show like one of the later scenes in the movie,
Yeah.
and you're like, wait, how did they get here?
And we're going to take that trip together.
Perfect. All right. So, as usual,
Mm-hmm.
you give me very little details about what we're going to be talking about, and in this one, you said the New England area,
Mm-hmm.
which right now we're from the intro in Connecticut, right? But we have somebody from New Hampshire.
He's called the Connecticut River Valley Killer.
Gotcha. This is in Cheshire, where you just said?
We're going to jump all over the map.
No, on the intro. That was Cheshire, wasn't it?
That was where the
fair?
The fair was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's Cheshire is Connecticut, isn't it? Cheshire.
She was driving along a highway west of Swansea, New Hampshire.
Maybe it's New Hampshire. I might be an idiot on that. Oh, jeez. Interesting. All right. That was a little bit of different type of intro for you there. It's usually just a briefing of the whole story, and we got a little bit of that. What you get from some of those movies where you get like one of the towards the end of the movie, you get a scene from there, and you're like, well, how'd they get there? So I'm excited to see how we got here. Well, cool. All right. You told me it was in the New England area. As you usually do, usually just kind of give me a location. Sometimes I get some more details and we'll base it off of that. Or sometimes I know the story and we'll figure out something. So anyway, you gave me the New England area and I thought, what better than at least here in Colorado, the most popular New England area brewery, and that is Sam Adams.
Sam Adams.
We featured Sam Adams on this podcast one other time. Was Lady of the Dunes, if I remember right, and we did a summer one. So I couldn't go back to the summer one, even though it's almost summer right now. And for us, it is summertime because we have 3 kids. So
it's very much vacation time.
Yeah. We went with Boston Lager.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. I think outside of Oktoberfest, Boston Lager's my second favorite from them.
I'm not going to pretend like this is my first time drinking it. So
No. You are drinking straight out of the bottle. I am drinking out of my little growler keg here.
Yes, because whether you've picked up on it or not, my husband is definitely the fancier of us two.
Yeah.
I want my beer in a can without a koozie. I'd like it in a glass bottle, not some fancy sort of dispensing device.
You make fun of me and I don't do it every time. It's not every time I have a beer, I put it in a glass. But when I do put it in a glass, you make fun of me. But I like it in a glass, especially if I want to drink it a little bit quicker.
You be fancy. I'm not here to judge.
Look, when it's in the glass, it's too easy to drink. And I would do it in the glass every single time. If I didn't want to drink or if I did want to drink like 15 beers, super easily, super quick.
Yeah.
But every now and then it's nice. But what's cool about this, so this is a keg. I'm going to feature the keg more than everybody knows about Sam Adams. This is from Growler Works. I had to look at the bottom to make sure. Growler Works, super cool. It's a Growler Works Go. It's 64 fluid ounces that you can fill in here. You put a CO2 cartridge in it, and it creates a keg. And you could just pour your own stuff in there. You can even do cocktails and juices, whatever, and it'll pour it out. And ours is really cool because it's got a Homeboys, the Avalanche on it, which, congrats to the Florida Panthers for winning. But
that's not how we roll here. Not congrats.
But it ain't happening next year because our boys, the Avalanche, are going to take it. Okay. And they should have taken it this year.
Here's why I like Boston Lager, because it's not pretentious like an IPA. It's not drinking itself out of a mini keg, but it's more complicated or complex than like a light beer.
Certainly.
It's got depth to it. And Oh,
Well, go ahead.
no, I was going to transition. So you
No, let's hear the transition.
And a beer with depth.
Oh, wait, you're doing that transition. Oh.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to say something about the beer too, and I didn't get a chance.
We're going to have to go back anyway.
Minka.
All right, Jason. Tell us, who was Samuel Adams? You don't know?
I wasn't expecting you to ask me that.
I know, that's why I asked you.
Was he a forefather?
He was a founding father.
Founding father, yeah.
He signed the Declaration of Independence.
Is forefathers another thing we call them, or did I just make that up?
I don't call them forefathers.
Are they probably not? Damn
he
it.
also was the founder of the Sons of Liberty.
Yeah.
Okay, so what do you...
he's super interesting. And he
and
created
what do you think
a beer.
of his beer?
Created a beer, huh?
Yeah.
Right. Did he actually create the beer? Or they just name him after him?
He's just...
Since 1776, Samuel Adams Boston Lager's been around. I doubt that.
Okay, so what do you think of that?
I agree with you that it's a little bit more flavorful. But lagers tend to be, so I like that. But no, I actually do think they're a very good lager. The Boston Lager is a good lager. It's got good flavor. Some lagers tend to have more flavors than the light beer, but they still have that like wateriness to them that lighter beers do.
Wetness?
No, a wateriness. No, it like tastes like water with a little bit of, did you say wetness?
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not, I mean the flavor of water, but with a little bit of flavored of beer. That's what light beers taste like. It's like water with, you're making me feel like an idiot now. The way you're looking at me.
I'm trying to.
The way you're looking at me.
I'm seriously not trying to.
Well, I drink a lot of IPAs these days, and so I'm used to a lot of bold flavor. And I think light beers taste like water with beer. And I think the Sam Adams Boston Lager does a good job of tasting less watery. So there's your super detailed
analysis
profile from your very own Jason of Perfectly Paired With.
Okay. So a beer called Boston Lager is perfectly paired with a story about a serial killer set in New England. So on the last episode, when we talked about the 13 sets of remains that have recently been discovered in the New England area, I briefly referred to another serial killer who hunted women decades ago in New England. And I made a statement that that killer, known as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, had been caught. I think I specifically used the phrase, he was donezo, but I was mistaken. When doing my research about
You said donezo?
I did.
Wow.
About the Connecticut River Valley Killer, this mugshot of a man seemed to pop up at the top of my search results every single time. Without looking into it, I assumed he was the serial killer in question. But as it would turn out, that man, although also having the moniker, which includes River Valley Killer, he actually hunted victims in Arkansas. When you asked me point blank whether or not the Connecticut River Valley Killer had been caught, specifically speaking about the man who targeted women along the New Hampshire-Vermont border between 1978 and 1987, I should have answered no. He has never been caught, let alone even named. So, without actually knowing who this perpetrator was, every victim I'm about to describe is simply loosely associated with or has been attributed to a man who is now referred to as the Connecticut River Valley Killer.
So we got another one where it's just dead bodies everywhere. They aren't quite sure who they're connected to, but not quite as bad as last week where
these
it was
are
just
more
like,
tight.
who the hell knows why all these dead bodies popped up?
Yes. And without knowing who this man is or the entirety of what investigators might know, we cannot be 100% sure. What I'm about to tell you is a story of one serial killer, but nevertheless, here we go.
Here we are, perfectly paired with the podcast that just talks about people who died and maybe it was a serial killer.
That's not what we usually do. It's just in the last two. Now, the first victim that has been attributed to the Connecticut River Valley Killer was a 27-year-old woman named Catherine Milliken. And on October 24th in 1978, Catherine left work and headed to the Chandler Brook Wetland Preserve, which is located in New London, New Hampshire. New Hampshire.
They got really creative with their names back in the day.
First of all, you have to
take all those England names and bring them over here.
Because these are the 13 colonies.
They could have gotten really fun with it and just been like, this one is tiger ear.
That's not what they did. Now it was
because they thought they were in India at one point. Tigers.
Now it was at this preserve that Catherine intended to photograph birds. But Catherine would never leave that preserve. Her remains were discovered just yards from where she had been last seen, and her attacker had stabbed her 29 times, both in her neck and her abdomen.
Jeez. She died.
Yes. At that time, investigators had no reason to believe that Catherine was a victim of a possible serial killer. In fact, the next victim...
Did they think she killed herself?
No, she obviously was murdered.
I'm just... Like, so it was a random act, they thought?
Most people who are murdered are not killed by serial killers.
Stabbed 29 times.
Heat of passion.
What years are we in?
78. 1978.
So I was in 78, saw a victim was 29-7. I'd be like, that's another serial killer. They're around all the time there. Not so. We went over it last episode.
In fact,
they were around all the time back then.
The next victim, Connecticut. You're messing me up.
Wait, what? Connecticut?
Connected. Here's the problem.
Connecticut?
Everywhere where I want to say Connecticut River Valley Killer, I've put CRVK, which isn't a good acronym. Like, it doesn't roll off the tongue. So I'm reading victim connected, but I see the CRVK coming, and it turned into Connecticut.
Yeah, I can see it. Honestly, this is
it's the worst.
I think we could agree. This is the worst named serial killer. And this is probably why nobody's really heard of him, because they're just like, no, who wants to say that tongue-tied?
Connecticut River Valley Killer. Okay.
It's too much. Connecticut alone, it could have just been CK.
We could just call it Krivik. The next victim, Connecticut to the Krivik Killer.
I don't think it's going to stick. Ugh.
Would not be discovered for almost 3 years. 37-year-old college student Mary Elizabeth Critchley decided to hitchhike from Massachusetts to her home in Waterbury, Vermont. Mary's friend saw her on July 25th, 1981, near exit 13 off of the Massachusetts Turnpike in Framingham, Massachusetts. And that would be the last time anyone saw her alive. Mary's remains would not be found until August 9th in a wooded area near Unity Stage Road in Unity, New Hampshire. Mary's cause of death remains undetermined because of the condition that her body was in when it was discovered, but the circumstances around her disappearance are suspicious. For example, where her body was discovered was 80 miles from where she was last seen.
Whoa.
So it's not like she just walked and died.
Yeah, it's like somebody pulled her out of a car and stuck her in a car.
Well, first of all, she was hitchhiking. So I'm going to need you to pay attention.
I'm trying. You got a lot of details.
Look alive.
I feel like you have more details in this than...
Yeah, because it's 8 different...
We're hopping... Listeners, bear with me here.
Okay.
I'm trying. I'm also my job as kind of, I guess you'd call me the host.
I like to think of you as a sidekick, Short Round.
No, I think I'm the host and you
Come
tell the
on, Short
stories.
Round.
Is to like, tune in and be like, oh, listeners might wonder about this. And probably most of the time they're like, come on, Jason, get it together. But
Do you know what's
boy, I did really good last
Yep.
time. Like paying attention. This is
Do you know
another
what's
one.
really unhelpful? Is messing with the momentum. So then,
You jerk.
after roughly another 3 years, the Connecticut River Valley Killer would strike again. This time,
Kerchick?
Krivik. This
Cricket?
time,
Cricket. That's what we're calling him.
Bernice Courtmanche, who was a high school student as well as a nurse's aide, left her home, which was located in West Claremont, New Hampshire, at around 3:30 p.m. on May 30th, 1984, headed to her boyfriend's home. Bernice never made it there, and Bernice would remain a missing person for almost 2 years.
Jeez. Was she just walking?
Mm-hmm. Then, on April 19th, 1986, Bernice's decomposed remains were found near the Sugar River, just off Cat Hole Hill Road in Newport, New Hampshire. She had been stabbed to death, and her throat had been slit.
But they could tell that from the remains that
So
2 years later?
I'll tell you, depending on the force, it can actually leave notches in bones.
I guess your throat doesn't have a whole lot of meat protecting bones that a knife would hit.
Now, the Connecticut River Valley Killer's next possible victim would not come 3 years later, as the earlier pattern might suggest. Instead, on July 22nd, 1984, 26-year-old Ellen Ruth Fried made a call to her sister from a payphone at about 2 a.m. This payphone was located in the parking lot of a Leo's Market, which is basically like a convenience store. Ellen was a registered nurse from Claremont, New Hampshire, who worked at the Valley Regional Hospital. Ellen spoke to her sister Heidi, who was living in California, for about an hour on this payphone. And during the course of their conversation, Ellen mentioned a strange car had begun to circle the parking lot. Feeling nervous about her situation, Ellen told her sister to wait. She just wanted to check to make sure that her car was going to start. After, I'm sure, what felt like an eternity for Heidi, Ellen came back on the line to say goodnight. That was the last time Heidi ever spoke to her sister. Ellen never reported to her shift the next day. Her car was discovered abandoned on Jarvis Road, which was just a few miles from the market where she used the payphone. Her skeletal remains were discovered 18 months later on September 19th, 1985, along the bank of the Sugar River in an isolated wooded area in Kellyville, New Hampshire. Indications on Ellen's body were that she was stabbed, and there were also indicators at the scene that she had been sexually assaulted. Ellen's remains were discovered in the same woods as Bernice Courtmanche's, who was an earlier victim.
All right. So 2 of these are not on the Connecticut River.
No,
but
they all follow this path.
The Sugar River is part of the Okay. So that's a connection to the Cricket Killer.
Yes.
Okay.
And actually, people who speak
what's the number we're at right now? 5?
First of all, people who speak about Ellen's disappearance will say she's not connected, but the fact that her body was found in the same woods as the first victims makes me think that she probably most likely was. I think she's 4. And not including our very first description.
Because I only listened to half of what you say. Were the first 2 victims on the Sugar River as well?
No.
Okay. So we have 2 on the Sugar River. I almost want to say this till the end of The 8.
I'm sorry, I'm not listening to you. Let me tune
I
in.
was kidding. You made the joke before that. Well, you never listened to me. Of the 8, are these the only 2 that are associated with a hospital or some sort of clinic, like nurse type things? Because the last
There
victim
were
was
lots
in
of
high school, but was a nurse's assistant, right?
yes. Yes,
Is
she
there more?
was. No, that's interesting that you
So,
pointed that out. I didn't pay attention to that. No, I think these are the only 2 nurse ones.
okay. But they're also found in the same area, which, like, there's multiple things that are
Yes,
similar, especially like the hospital thing.
correct.
Maybe this guy is around hospitals.
So, next, on July 10th, 1985, Eva Marie Morse, a 27-year-old single mother, was hitchhiking from her work along Route 12 between Charleston, New Hampshire, and Claremont. Eva never made it home. 1 year and 15 days later, on July 25th, 1986, Eva's remains were found in the woods in Unity, which is several miles from her hitchhiking route. She had been stabbed and her throat had been slit. Her remains were located 500 feet from where Mary, a previous victim, was found.
Jeez. How long after her death were her remains found?
1 year and 15 days.
Damn. And it was only that far away? It wasn't
From a
even
previous victim, but that
No, but from where she was, like,
no, it was
hitchhiking
miles from her hitchhiking.
from.
So I don't know if
I
that's
guess in
10
my
miles or 15
Oh.
miles or 20 miles.
I went to like 2 miles.
It could be 2. I don't know.
Also, are you ever just like fascinated with just the way the times were back then, that you could just get anywhere by throwing your thumb up and someone will pick you up and bring you there?
As a female, I am
Yeah,
flabbergasted
that's wild.
at either women were just more naive, which feminists everywhere are going, you're
Of course,
dumb.
this was 70s, like women empowerment was
It's
coming
later
in.
70s, early 80s, or it just was a time where women felt completely safe. At no point in my life would I pull over at 2 a.m. in front of a closed convenience store like a previous victim and call my sister in California for a chat. One of our victims felt completely comfortable doing that.
Well, maybe she was falling asleep at the wheel. She needed something to wake her up. That one isn't as
I
surprising.
think she was driving home from a shift at a hospital
If
and she needed to call her sister.
that was the so we're gonna get into another.
No, this was the woman who was on the call. This was the victim where you made the connection. So you don't have
the first one.
No.
No, I mean the first of the 2 nurses, right?
One
No.
of the 2.
Sorry,
There's the nurse's aide
ignore
and the
me.
nurse.
I think the first one was the high
and
school.
she was just like,
nurse's
I'm
aide.
just going to call my sister at 2 a.m. because there it's 11 o'clock.
But that is less.
At 2 a.m., no.
But just hitchhiking, because like, didn't you say she just got off a shift and hitchhiked back to wherever she needed to go?
Eva, yes.
So she's hitchhiking to and from work.
Yeah, it's
Free rides.
ridiculous.
Free rides. Plus the bus system is so much less back then. Buses aren't going everywhere. But people just must have been so much more trustworthy, or people did pick up hitchhikers so much more than they do today.
And now you can't trust anybody.
Yeah.
Maybe the driver's a serial killer. Maybe the hitchhiker's a serial killer.
Did you drive
You just
in
don't know.
the mountains quite a bit as a teenage driver?
No.
No, I did, because I was a snowboarder and we were up there, throughout the whole winter. The amount of hitchhikers was insane. I'm telling you, we would see 2 to 3 hitchhikers every time we went. I think we might have picked up one once, but anyway, that's the only time I've seen hitchhikers, I think, in my life. I mean, I've seen maybe one or two that were broken down. But you just don't see it that much anymore. And apparently everybody did it back then.
I think they made hitchhiking illegal in a lot of places.
I think so too, because of all the killings and disappearances. But a lot of our stories include hitchhikers.
Set in a specific time period. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, for the next possible victim of the Crivic, Connecticut River Valley Killer.
Cricket killer.
Linda M. Moore. For her, our killer's MO would have changed if he were the one responsible for Moore's death. You see, Linda was simply home alone on April 4th, 1986, while her husband was at work. A neighbor actually saw Linda working in their yard of their home located off of Route 121 in Vermont at 2 p.m. that afternoon. Just 1 hour later, Linda's husband returned home to find his wife dead in their living room. Based on the state of the home, it was clear that a violent struggle had taken place, despite there being no signs of forced entry. Linda had been stabbed 25 times, and as there were no signs of ransacking in the home, the thought that the perpetrator had been looking for something, maybe motivated by robbery, was ruled out rather quickly.
Also, we could call him CRV killer. It sounds like a car killer, but...
Isn't that a respiratory virus?
A CRV? I just know it as a Honda. It's a little... Your sister has a CRV.
We might as well just accept it. Connecticut River Valley Killer.
CRV killer.
Moving on.
Honda CRV killer.
Moving on to January 10th. In 1987, a woman named Barbara Agnew had gone skiing with some friends on Stratton Mountain. Barbara left to head home around 10 p.m. despite an impending snowstorm. A few days later, her BMW was found at a rest stop just off Route 91 in Hartford, Vermont. This location was just a few miles from Barbara's home. And when the car was discovered, the door was ajar and there was blood not only on the steering wheel, but also in the back seat. Her remains were located on March 28th, same year, 12 miles from the rest area in a wooded area off of Advent Hill Road in Hartford, Vermont. She had been stabbed in the neck and chest.
What number are we on? 6? 7?
I think it's 8. No.
Is that 8?
7 or 8.
Well, you only have 8, right?
Well, this brings us to Jane Borowski, the final victim attributed to the Connecticut River Valley Killer. But Jane, who we started this podcast off with, would be the only victim who survived.
Let's go, Jane.
So, after calling her attacker an asshole and asking him about her windshield, the man who seemingly was headed back to his car turned around, and he had a knife in his hand. Jane, who had seen a car driving along the road in the distance, knew she needed to run. But mid-stride, Jane felt the man's body crash into her own, tackling her to the ground. It was in that position that Jane would be stabbed 27 times before her assailant stood and simply, calmly walked back to his car before driving away.
He had his number down. He needed between 24 and 29 stabs.
Jane would describe her injuries in the following manner. Quote, I had 2 collapsed lungs. He cut the tendon in my hand and in my knee. He sliced my jugular and he lacerated my liver. So I had a piece of my liver removed. But my baby was unharmed. There were no stabs or anything to my baby whatsoever. She was perfectly fine. Jane, who gave birth to a healthy daughter 2 months later, described the vehicle driven by her attacker as a brown or gold brown Jeep Wagoneer. The man who attacked her, she described him as being a white man with blonde hair. He was clean shaven, roughly 5'7", and he weighed between 150 and 160 pounds. A composite drawing was created, which I am going to send you. And I want you to tell me if this looks like anybody you know.
Nice burp there, too.
That's the Boston.
That's the Boston. All right.
Because I see a neighbor, which the timing wouldn't work out for it to be him, but
all right. I'm gonna pause it for a second so I can pull this up. I turned my Wi-Fi off on the computer. So 1 second. Wow. Yeah, definitely knew who you're talking about. Okay. So that's a pretty good sketch. I mean, the eyes say something because that's what I saw right away, and I was like, oh my gosh, that looks like so and so. And I could imagine, like, that sketch is pretty good. I could imagine that getting somebody caught.
yeah, because we're not saying this person is the Connecticut River Valley Killer because he's way too young. But right away, that spoke to me, this person.
Yeah.
And it communicated the exact same thing to you. So anybody who knew a man that looked like that, who saw that picture,
would have thought it.
I think would have
in
connected
any composites we've looked at during the
the
podcast, I don't think I've associated anybody I know with them.
Correct.
I think that's the first composite sketch of anything that I've heard about or seen on the news throughout my life where I was like, man, the eyes kind of look like so-and-so. So good composite sketch.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, where did that take them?
Well, before we can talk about the composite sketch leading to anything, a profile for the Connecticut River Valley Killer was created by a criminal psychologist named John Philippin. And this profile indicated that the Connecticut River Valley Killer would have done...
CRV killer, come on.
Would have done a lot of driving in his everyday life and would have chosen low-risk sites in which to either pick up his victims or to kill his victims.
It would have been awesome if CRVs existed back then.
Now, the Connecticut, it's a Jeep Wagoneer. The Connecticut River Valley Killer would not have been stalking his victims before choosing them. And the profile highlighted that part of the killer's excitement would have come from picking up a victim and then having the power and the control to drive them to an alternative location where the sole purpose was to kill them.
Anything about knowledge of human anatomy or working within that sphere?
No.
Really?
The common denominator is the location.
Okay. What about the stab marks of the previous victims to the one that survived? Were they similar areas?
It was.
I mean, that we know of one. We know of a couple that were similar.
I'm sure it was to the torso, but she also.
No, but there's also the jugular.
Correct. It was the neck. It was the trunk of the human. But our surviving victim was very, very specific about protecting her unborn child. So she was protecting her abdomen.
But it feels like he went after 20 spots that could kill. Like, along the abdomen. It just sounded like these spots that would bleed out if you didn't seek attention. And then, of course, the throat, the jugular. And even, you said something about the wrist around her hand was slashed as well, but that might have been
defensive wound. At that point. I just think he went for where he assumed the most damage would be.
It is just weird that 3 that are associated, you got between 24, 29 stab wounds. Are any of the other victims multiple stabbed that they could tell? I don't remember.
The ones where they could determine causes of death were stabbed. All the other victims associated, they couldn't determine because the body was too decomposed.
Yeah. And did the whatever you called them, the one that did an analysis between all of them, did he think that this could all be from one killer?
I think so, yeah.
Interesting.
Now, one name has been linked as, I don't even know if it's a possible person.
So no one's been arrested for this?
No. There's been one name named as a possible person, but I read this resource that I like the way they said it. We know he's a serial killer. We just don't know what group of bodies to associate him with. So he's been quasi-linked to the set of remains in New England. And this man is a man named Michael Nicolau. And during the time of the murders, Nicolau lived in Holyoke, Massachusetts, which is in New England, and it matches the fact that the man who attacked our final surviving victim, Jane, was driving a car from Massachusetts. Now, his wife had relatives that lived in Vermont near the I-91 roadway, which follows just to the west of the Connecticut River Byway, which is kind of the path where all these victims were either located or were last seen. Now, Nicolau's first wife, Michelle Ashley, went missing from Massachusetts in 1988 under suspicious circumstances. She has never been found. Nicolau himself would go on to murder his third wife and his stepdaughter before shooting himself on New Year's Eve in 2005. At that time, he was living in Florida. There's no physical evidence that I know of that connects him to the crime. It's just simply he's a killer, and in terms of proximity, was close enough to have committed these crimes.
Yeah. And if he killed that first wife, he would be a serial killer by the time he put a bullet in his own head. But a cowardly, I mean, they're all coward.
Are they?
No.
I don't know.
It's weird talking about serial. It's like, how do we do the vocabulary around them?
You don't call him the goat because that upsets people.
Still coming out with that shirt. We got a guy lined up. We're coming out with our goat shirt. We're coming out with the O.J. Simpson shirt. You just wait. All right. Yeah. No. That guy who kills himself after killing his first wife and then
Maybe
a wife
he
and a
was
daughter. Though the
tired.
daughter, maybe
It was
the
a
stepdaughter pushed him over his edge. So
he was
'cause he cared
estranged. He was estranged from them.
Then yeah, he didn't do it. This person been living with many bodies. Now, there is also the possibility that this killer or killers of the 8 that we have here is maybe just 4 of the serial killers that we have from the previous episode, which I did determine to maybe be like 12 serial killers.
I don't know, maybe the jawbone from the last episode could be attributed to him. If he was in his, I think our final surviving victim said he was between 30 and 40. How old would he be now? Like, let's even say he was 30
Well, remind me.
85.
He's
like,
for this,
yeah.
for these guys.
So if he's still killing people, he's like 79.
Look, people just live different back then, especially if he's maybe off grid a bit. He can keep his body healthy. not eating McDonald's every day and all that. Who knows?
Well,
some spry 80-year-olds out there.
As of today, the Connecticut River Valley Killer remains unknown, as does the exact number of possible victims. And with the discovery of so many bodies in New England earlier this year, it has many people wondering, is there another serial killer who could be calling New England home once again? That's not the outro.
That kind of sounded like it.
I know. It's the way I deflected my voice.
I liked it.
But that's not the outro.
Do you have more info
No
for
more
us?
information.
Okay. You just have your outro.
I just have the outro.
I don't know what to think of this one. Do you think that they're all associated with one serial killer?
I do.
Why?
I think it has to do with characteristics associated with each victim. It has to do with the mode of killing, which is stabbing. It has to do with picking women up in one place and then transporting them to a different place. I do think they're all associated.
Aren't most of those things MO for a lot of serial killers back then? Or even now?
I would not make that conclusion.
No?
No, I wouldn't. Ted Bundy strangled.
But he also did the hitchhiker, tricked women, moved them from one place to another, not too far away.
It's the geographic region.
Like, especially early Ted Bundy.
So here's what I'll tell you. I'll tell you that I think during this
guy
time
reminds
period,
me of Ted Bundy a little bit.
It reminds me of any killer who travels along a specific highway. I think during this time period, the main way to find victims associated with a killer, a multiple body killer, also known as a serial killer, is the paths that they traveled in order to find their victims and dispose of their victims. And that's why he's called the Connecticut River Valley Killer, because it's clear that he made many a journey down this path.
All right, so there's one that I've been thinking of him the whole time. Maybe you can know where I'm going with this, and if not, we'll cut this out because it's going to be boring as fuck. Who do you remember a serial killer that did do like highway, picked up hitchhikers? There's one that
There's several.
Like he either picked up on an off ramp or on ramp, or the victim escaped on an on ramp or off ramp. That's the only thing that
I think
only
you're thinking
detail.
Of Joyride, which is a movie.
No, I swear this is something either you and I have talked about or we actually did a podcast on. And I cannot think of it at all. Anyway, it just does. I'm getting my thoughts together. This doesn't seem uncommon back then. Like, as far as, I mean, obviously it's uncommon because it's like probably like 4 or 5 people doing these acts. But we just heard about it. But no, it's not. It's way more common. I feel like there's a lot of people that got away with serial killing back then. I don't know. No, we need to go back. I don't like anything I just said. Okay, so if those things are in common, they aren't in common with every single victim here. So what's the commonality between all 8 that makes it for one serial killer?
Characteristics of the victim, the gender and the age range.
What was the age range? I mean, on one was a high schooler.
Yeah, but I think she was like 18.
Sure.
The old 37. So it's adult women, not elderly women, not
It's mid-range.
It's
young to mid-range
women.
Yeah. I mean, 37-year-old back then might have looked like she was 50, depending on her haircut.
I think it's like a spider's web where maybe not every single connecting thread connects all of them, but there are multiple connecting threads to each. So it's either the characteristic of the victim or the mode of killing, which is stabbing, or this notion that they were easy targets picked up because they were hitchhiking and taken someplace else. And would be a different story had all these crimes been committed in a time when there was like DNA, but we don't have that.
Yeah.
So
well, you did show me a map of the way.
Oh, it's geographic location. I changed my answer. That's the number one connecting characteristic.
The river valley goes, and the highway that runs along this river, and I mean, they're like perfectly next to each other. There's different mileages between different parts of it, but would be convenient for a couple of them. I don't know. It does make sense though what you're saying. The more I think about it, because if a killer wanted to make his killings diverse enough, but close enough that you could pull it off, that area kind of makes sense. Like you can use the river, you can use different things. There's towns, there's stops in between all of it. There's a shit ton of women hitchhiking, so you just have a plethora of people to pick from. And
See, and do you know what I find more interesting though? Is his interactions with the surviving victim, because it makes sense that
that one
he
is.
would use
Ooh,
some sort
let's go
of
into that.
like ruse, like, hey, do you know if the payphone is working? Almost like he was intending to walk over to the payphone to see if that would get her out of the car. But that whole thing about like, you hurt my girlfriend real bad. And then she almost like convinced him, like, no, it wasn't me. I didn't like hurt your girlfriend, to the point where he was like walking away, which leads me to be like, is his killings more about this? Like he has some sort of misconceived notion that there's this woman out here who hurt his girlfriend and he's like seeking revenge over and over. Like that to me is such a bizarre interaction. And then if he's pulling up on the first victim who's looking at birds, did he just attack her, or did he like, you hurt my girlfriend?
Well, you bringing that up
Like
actually,
it's so bizarre to me.
you bringing that up actually kind of makes the one they think like the name they suspect make a little bit more sense. Because if this guy had uh, mental instability, like schizophrenia or something like that, bipolar or whatever, to make him kill his wife, get away with it, and then in his head, or well, not then, but he just had something wrong in his head that made him a killer, and then create this world where he's always searching for like the problem of why he like hurt his first wife or girlfriend in his head. And he's always created this world where he needs to make somebody pay. Like he has this buildup that happens over time, and whether it's voices or a manic state that he goes into, that he has to find the next what would you say? I guess suspect of why his girlfriend slash wife was killed, and make
Or
them the victim because his wife girlfriend was killed.
so the only the only person he could blame his wife's disappearance on is Jane, because everyone before that, his wife wasn't missing. But maybe he came up with these stories
So I didn't follow the
every
timeline
single
on that.
time. Like the first
Okay.
victim was 78. His wife didn't go missing until 1988. But
Oh,
maybe
that's
he
right.
constantly had an
But was Jane
explanation.
after 88?
She was in 88.
She was in
So
88.
I don't know whether his first wife went missing before or after.
Oh,
But it's just interesting because that's such a strange explanation for why he's attacking this
okay.
woman.
Ignore everything I said before. The dates were, God, I came out with some stupid theory without knowing the timeline or remembering the timeline. Maybe he could have been a serial killer, killing everybody, doing everything, thinking he's getting away with it, and it's just taking over his life. And
What?
And he ended up killing his first wife, and he's like, and started feeling actual guilt.
What if every female victim in his mind was his girlfriend, starting with the first one?
Yeah.
And so every subsequent victim, he seeks after to seek revenge for the previous victim who he saw in his mind as his girlfriend.
Thank you. You kind of summed up a little bit what I was trying to kind of go for in that, whatever the stupid,
And then he ended his
the
life
stupidity
with the
that was coming out of my mouth. Yeah, yeah, and he kills his wife and
And then
gets
eventually
away
it
with
turns
it.
into his wife, and then he.
But the last ones, there's something about it that just pushes him over the edge. And that's why I brought up the mental instability, that is something's happening where he's either hearing voices, schizophrenic, he's bipolar, or goes into manic states, and he just can't handle it anymore and decides to kill himself because he just killed his second wife and her daughter.
Well, that was his third wife. I don't know what happened to his second.
Well, his second killed wife.
That we know of.
His second murdered by his hands wife and her daughter. And
Yes.
he was just like, all right, I'm at, what would that be? 11 now. I can't do this anymore.
All right.
Or, you know what? None of them have to do with him. And we have 8 more serial killers in New England.
We have 11 more serial killers. Who knows? Now, this region of the United States, which we refer to as New England, is known for a lot of things. It's clam chowder, for one, and for another, their once dominant football team. The beer we drank tonight comes straight from the heart, Boston, as does a wicked good baseball team.
Boston Red Sox.
Yes.
And a stupid team called New England Patriots.
But New England's reputation actually has a darker side. It also happens to be where Stephen King sets many of his horrifying tales and where true horror took place during the Salem witch trials. And don't even get me started on the strange Puritan beginning of this colonial region. Today, New England boasts rugged coastlines, at times the fog eerily rolling in heavy off the Atlantic, bringing with it things unknown from the vast expanse of seawater. Beyond the coast lie dense forests that evoke a sense of uneasiness, as though a lurking evil is contained within the trees. And the winter nights in New England, well, they are some of the coldest and darkest in all of the country. But maybe, just maybe, it isn't the frigid temperatures keeping New Englanders inside at night. And with all of the weird and creepy that tends to roam New England freely, maybe, just maybe, it is a land where serial killers have, can, and will freely roam uncaught.
Yeah, all they do.
Clearly.
Even in today's age.
Jeez. There's a line in Mulan where Mushu goes, bodies are popping out of snow like daisies. That's all I could think of our last episode. Bodies popping up out of the snow like daisies.
Like cop friends from different districts. And they just found one up there. Oh, they just found one up there. The bodies just pop. How do you do a Boston accent? Yeah, bodies just popping up like daisies. That was
Oh.
You're gonna channel.
Not even close.
Yeah, bodies just popping up like daisies. Not great.
Anyway, I like the Red Sox. Go Red Sox.
The Red Sox are. Well, I don't care about baseball because my baseball team sucks. Plus, your baseball team beat my baseball team in the World Series.